That's ASMR. So in today's video I'm going to read some fairy tale for you. So this is picture book. My fabulous fairy tale collection. My fabulous fairy tale collection. So let's begin. It's a beautiful picture book, and let's read. Let's read Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So here's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Once upon a time, there lived a princess named Snow White. She had skin as white as snow, lips as red as a rose, and hair as black as ebony. Snow White's stepmother, the queen, was also very beautiful but vain. She owned a magic mirror that always answered truthfully to any question it was asked. The queen would often stand in front of the mirror, combing her long hair, and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is fairest of them all?" And the mirror would sigh, wondering why nobody ever asked questions like, "What is the meaning of life?" But it would reply, "You are fairest of all." This made the queen very happy. As Snow White grew up, she became even more beautiful. One morning, when the queen asked a question, the mirror replied, a little too cheerfully, "Snow White is fairest of all." The queen flew into a terrible rage and called her trusted huntsman. "I want Snow White gone," she told him. "Take her into the woods and tie her to a tree. She will be eaten by wild animals and never return." The huntsman set off to do as he was told. But when the huntsman took Snow White into the forest and she happily chatted away and offered to carry his bow for him, he found he could not bring himself to do what the queen had ordered, so he let her go. "Run away as far as you can and never return," he told Snow White. So she ran into the forest and kept running for as long as she could. Just as cold and hunger finally set in, she saw a small cottage in the distance. Finding nobody at home, she gently opened the door and went inside. Inside the cottage, she found a tiny table with 7 very small place settings. In the kitchen, she found bread and water, which she savored with setting Is it a monster? What shall we do? Attack it. Wait, 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 said another. It's just a human girl. The dwarfs all crowded around Snow White to get a closer look. So it is silly us. Snow White awoke with a start to find 7 little men standing around her. She was frightened at first but quickly realized the dwarfs were very friendly. When Snow White told them her story, they soon became fast friends, and the dwarfs decided that she should stay with them in their cottage. But you must be very careful, one of the dwarfs warned her. You may still be in danger from the queen, so don't go out into the woods alone and never even open the door to a stranger. Back at the castle, the queen, believing that Snow White was no longer a problem, arose the next morning, went to her magic mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is fairest of them all?" The mirror replied with a groan, "Snow White is fairest of all." That foolish huntsman, he can't even be trusted to get rid of a silly little girl. If you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. So the jealous queen, who was consumed with anger, decided she would not rest until she found where Snow White was hiding. First, the queen began by plastering wanted posters in every town and along every roadside, but the creatures of the forest who loved Snow White made it their mission to tear each one down. After receiving no news of Snow White's whereabouts, the queen realized the answer had been right in front of her all along. She stood before her magic mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror made of glass, tell me where the brat was last." The mirror, feeling somewhat alarmed at Queen's angry tone and her ability to smash into the hundreds of tiny pieces, sadly replied, "Snow White lives with the 7 dwarfs in their cottage in the forest." The queen set to work on an evil plan. Disguising herself as a peasant woman, she scoured the markets for the biggest, juiciest apples she could find. Then she selected the best apple of the bunch and carefully brushed one side with poison. The queen then placed the apples in a basket and made her way to the dwarf's cottage. Once there, she waited patiently for the dwarfs to go to work. Apples for sale, called the queen outside the cottage window. Remembering the dwarf's warning, Snow White cautiously peered out the window and, upon seeing the delicious apple in the basket, said sadly, "I'm not to let anyone in." "There is no need," replied the queen as she took a large bite from the unpoisoned side of the apple. "Here, try this," she said, and passed the apple through the window. Snow White thought she would much rather have her own apple rather than a half-eaten one. But not wanting to be rude to the kind old lady, she took the apple and bit into the opposite side. The poison struck immediately and Snow White fell to the floor. Delighted at her success, the queen cackled with laughter all the way back to the castle. As soon as she arrived, she went straight to her magic mirror. This time, in answer to her question, the bold mirror answered, "You are fairest of all." The queen was very pleased. That evening, the dwarfs found Snow White lying on the cottage floor. Distraught, they tried everything they could think of to wake her, but nothing worked. day, a handsome prince stumbled upon the casket and was instantly mesmerized by the beautiful girl inside. He knew he could not live without being able to look upon her lovely face, so he asked the dwarfs for permission to take her back to his kingdom. The dwarfs agreed, sad to lose Snow White, but glad that she would have such a fine resting place. The prince thanked the dwarfs and prepared the casket for the long journey. But as he lifted the casket, the piece of poisoned apple fell from Snow White's mouth and she instantly awoke. Snow White and the prince fell madly in love and soon traveled to the prince's kingdom to be married. They lived happily ever after, often returning to the cottage in the forest to visit their favorite friends, the dwarves. The queen, having believed this whole time that Snow White was gone, stood in front of the magic mirror one day and asked her favorite question. This time the mirror gleefully answered, "Evil queen, who art so vain? Snow White is alive again. She is lovely of heart and face and has 1,000 times your beauty and grace.